When you hear the music of the Carpenters, you just hear perfection, right? Those flawless harmonies, that immaculate production, and of course, one of the most iconic voices in the history of pop music. But underneath that impossibly smooth surface, there's a whole other story of obsessive craftsmanship, crushing pressure, and, well, a profound personal struggle. So what really built that beautiful melancholy sound? Let's dig in and find out. Okay, right off the bat, we've got to challenge the main image we all have of Karen Carpenter. In her own words, her first love, her core identity was being a drummer. See, she wasn't a singer who happened to play drums. She was a drummer who sang. And that one little fact, it pretty much reframes everything we think we know about her. And this contrast, this split, is really the key to their entire story. The public saw this squeaky clean sunshine pop duo delivering these perfect melodies. But behind the curtain, the reality was this relentless, obsessive grind in the studio, and a level of personal turmoil that would, tragically, come to define their lives. So, to really get the music, you have to get the two people who made it all happen. You had Richard, the meticulous musical architect, and then you had Karen, this intuitive, once-in-a-generation voice, and as we now know, instrumental talent. Their paths to that point were totally different. Richard was the prodigy, off to Yale for classical training when he was just 16. The family even moved to California, right into the heart of the music industry. And Karen, well, her motivation was a little more relatable. She just really wanted to get out of gym class. But by joining the marching band, she stumbled upon her true calling, the drums, an instrument she attacked with this incredible, fiery passion. Now, that iconic Carpenter sound, it didn't just happen overnight. It was forged. It was hammered out over years of playing in different bands, constantly tweaking things, and getting rejected over and over again by an industry that was all about acid rock, not this kind of pristine pop. You can actually trace their sound's evolution pretty clearly. They started out as a serious jazz trio, which just shows you the incredible musical chops they had. Then they formed a group called Spectrum, which is where Richard started getting obsessed with perfecting those complex vocal layers. And finally, in a makeshift garage studio, they put it all together on some demos that eventually landed in the hands of a legend, Herb Alpert at A&M Records. You really have to put yourself back in that time. Their timing was just perfect. In an era of loud protest anthems and psychedelic rock, their clean, melodic, and almost painfully crafted music was like a calm port in a storm. It was exactly what a huge part of the country was hungry for, even if they didn't know it yet. And when they broke through, it wasn't just big, it was a total takeover. From 1970 to 73, they were an absolute commercial juggernaut. We're talking multiple albums shooting to #2, and their first big singles collection hitting #1. They didn't just have hits. For a few years there, they were the charts. So the big question is, how did they pull it off? This is where we have to talk about the genius of Richard Carpenter, the architect. He wasn't just writing songs, he was building these incredibly intricate, multi-layered structures of pure sound. The absolute secret sauce to their sound was a technique called vocal overdubbing. And look, this wasn't just adding a couple of harmony parts. Richard would have Karen sing the same line over and over and over, layering dozens of recordings to build this massive, shimmering choir using just their two voices. It's kind of mind-blowing. The process itself was a complete obsession. It would start with Karen's intimate, close-mic'd lead vocal. Then came the grueling work of recording dozens and dozens of backing vocal parts. Richard would then layer them with this almost mathematical precision until he got that seamless, otherworldly sound that literally no one else could copy. But Richard's toolkit was way more than just vocals. To get that signature warm sound, he'd layer a grand piano with a Wurlitzer electric piano to thicken it up. And then he did something nobody saw coming. On Goodbye to Love, he dropped in a distorted, searing rock guitar solo. People were shocked, but with that one move, he basically helped invent the power ballad, proving they were way more innovative than their soft rock label ever gave them credit for. But let's be real, none of Richard's architectural genius would have mattered without the instrument at the absolute center of it all, Karen's voice. Richard himself said it best, her low notes were the money. That rich 3-octave contralto, it wasn't just beautiful. It felt like a secret being whispered right into your ear. It had a warmth and a kind of built-in sadness that made every single lyric feel deeply, personally true. But, and this is a huge but, this level of success, this obsessive hunt for perfection, well, it always comes at a price.
And for the Carpenters, that price was staggering. The pressure to keep up that flawless image and sound began to take an immense personal toll on both of them.
Just try to wrap your head around this number: over 800 concerts in just 5 years. And that doesn't even count the endless TV appearances, the recording sessions, the travel. The schedule wasn't just tough, it was completely unsustainable. It was a machine, and they were trapped inside it. So, how do you cope with that kind of pace? For Richard, he started using Quaaludes just as a sleep aid, but it eventually spiraled into a severe addiction that just drained his creative energy and started to seriously affect his ability to work.
And at the exact same time, Karen was fighting her own private, devastating battle with anorexia nervosa. It's so important to remember that back in the 70s, this was an illness that the public and even a lot of doctors knew almost nothing about. It left her tragically isolated in her struggle.
So it all came to a head in 1979. It was a huge turning point. Richard checked himself into rehab and thankfully got clean. During that time off, Karen grabbed the chance to find her own musical voice, recording this more mature, disco-influenced solo album. But when the record label just flat out rejected it, imagine pouring your soul into something only to be told no thanks. It was a devastating blow to her already fragile confidence.
And that really brings us to the final chapter of their story. It's one of unimaginable tragedy, for sure, but it's also about a profound reevaluation of their music and a legacy that would end up reaching far, far beyond the pop charts. They had one last hit in 1981, but maybe the most poignant moment came in April of 1982. Even as her health was failing, Karen went back into the studio to record the song Now, and she delivered it in a single, flawless, heartbreaking take. Less than a year later, she was gone.
Karen's death was a bombshell. It was a shock that just rippled through the entire culture. Because she was the first major celebrity to die from complications of anorexia, her tragic death forced a global conversation about eating disorders. It brought this misunderstood illness out of the shadows for the very first time. So when you step back and look at the whole picture, their legacy is just so much more than tragedy. It's over 100 million records sold. It's technical innovation in the studio that changed how people make music. It's those timeless, unforgettable melodies. And it is a lasting cultural impact that literally changed public health awareness forever. And you know what's really amazing? Over time, the story has completely changed. That old, dismissive soft rock label has been totally replaced by a new appreciation. Critics now see them for what they really were: absolute masters of a pop craftsmanship that was sophisticated, timeless, and remains utterly unparalleled. So I guess I'll just leave you with this one final thought to chew on. That beautiful, unmistakable sadness that you can hear in their music, was it simply the tragic price they had to pay for chasing perfection? Or was that melancholy the very source of their incredible art all along?